Hello and welcome back to the OnlyAccies podcast. It is the first podcast of the 22-23 season, and it's the first podcast in our new podcast studio here at G4 Podcasts in Motherwell. So thank you a lot to them. We will leave a link to their website in the description if you want to come and use the studios for your own podcast or everything else. And click that link and all your information is there. But first of all, guys,
and Ben will get commission because he now works here.
In the digs.
First of all, it's been a long summer. Probably not the summer we would have wanted, and it's fair to say that we as OnlyAccies have been fairly quiet over the summer, but that's down to there's not been much to report on.
I think we've obviously said there was a lot we wanted to do, and we do have ideas going forward. Obviously having these studios will be good for us, and there is a lot of content which we want to produce, but there's no point in filling a void if there's nothing to be filled with. We'd have just been talking about one thing for the past month and a half, so there was no point in us constantly going over and over and over things. We have reached out to old players. We've had some feedback, some just ignored us. But we hope to have, obviously, content going forward. And now that stuff seems to be picking up Accies-wise, it means that we'll be able to pick up, because it's been a very long month and a half of practically hee-haw.
Aye. I think my mindset's been in case I've not been interested. I've been no wanting to know. It's been kind of constant reminders of where we are at the moment, and it's not a good thing. We will obviously pick on some positivity as we go on our discussion, but it's been a bit of an eye opener the way that the rest of Scottish football scene is at the moment. I think it's not been a good time, and I've tried to just keep my head down and not pay attention to it, because too many truths are getting shown up just now that I'm not happy to see. But again, happy to be back and talking about it though.
Yeah. Before we go into any of that stuff, there has been one positive that's came out, and that is the season tickets that are out. The club are giving away under 18 season tickets completely free, and we've spoke about that deal on Twitter, how good that deal is, and how much we hope that will bring in what's quoted as the next generation of Accies fans. I think it's a fantastic deal. It's a great way to get young kids involved in Accies and wanting to go back to Accies, and it will hopefully encourage more parents, obviously, to buy their own adult season ticket to bring their kids as well. And it's just a really, really good promotion, and hopefully it's getting out there and people are getting interested, because if we were under 18, we would certainly be
100%.
grabbing that.
It was one of the things that when I first started going, I'd been there a few seasons already, but I think I've talked about the deal several times in the Hamilton Advertiser. They had a wee slip that I had to fill out, and then the first 1,000, I think it was at the time as well, they get free tickets for under 18. So no, fair play to the club. We talk about sort of incentives that they can do time and time again, and it's another one that's you need to take your hat off to them. We spoke to the club about things that could be done sort of on social media, sort of stuff to be marketed, and they fair play to them, they took it on board. They obviously added the online form because they initially didn't have that. We spoke to them about that, so fair play to them there. They've took that on board, and hopefully they just keep advertising that deal, get as many under 18s in as possible, and hopefully the under 18s have a good team to shout about, because let's not forget about what's went on the past month and a half as well. A lot of fans have been in limbo, manager to sort of have no signings, etc. So there's been die-hard Accies fans are sort of in limbo whether they were going to get a season ticket or not. But the under 18 deal, they're not going to be that bothered about that sort of in-depth information. So to get them to come along in the first place, and then hopefully that's a platform for them, the next generation as such, it's a good incentive. And yeah, we'll hear ourselves on the radio fairly soon advertising that as well.
We've got an ad going out on the radio soon. I think that'll be really interesting. Before we go on to talk about the manager, because obviously the manager I think will take up the vast majority of this podcast, let's talk about the squad update that went out. Obviously our list of players that we've kept and released. I suppose the big ones from that are club captain Brian Easton. As far as we're aware, currently is out of contract with Accies. He is not signed over, but you expect him to be soon at least?
I would imagine so. I think the tail end of the season, I think it was it Naylor, your pal, who tweeted how even guys like Popescu and O'Reilly don't perform the way they perform without Brian Easton in that team. And the tail end of the season, he really did show his importance. And the fact that I think at the start of the season, I mean, you spent the majority of the first quarter writing him off, saying he's retiring.
Completely did.
But to be fair, he really, he did really turn up, and he showed his class, kind of tactically, physically, even as well. He kept up with a lot of them. I think way obviously it looks like, well, Popescu's definitely away. We don't know about Jamie Hamilton. We're going to need that kind of steady head with Brian Easton, so it's going to be a huge signing. But I would imagine he's going to be signing on.
I mean, you noticed if he might be out of contract, and for all we know, he could have signed a contract by now. They've just not announced it yet until they sort of might be doing a fucking mass upload about what information that's about to come out. But one thing I picked up on at the weekend, obviously I wasn't at the games, but the fact that they announced him as Brian Easton in the team sheet. Usually Scott Struthers is that pernickety that Easton isn't signed, so he would have him down as a trialist. Aye. Whereas it was announced as Brian
That's
Easton.
a good point,
do you know what I mean?
fair,
so I've got he's a coach as well, with the sort of rumours circulating about the sort of managerial changes, etc. You'd think Easton as a youth coach might take a sort of maybe a step up to the 18s, maybe a step into the first team coaching setup as well. So all in all, I'd expect him to sign fairly soon, and it's a player that we definitely need to have, because the difference you notice, he's obviously not graced with much pace anymore, but the difference you notice on the pitch when he's there sort of to guide the other players around him, as you said, O'Reilly and Popescu they were a brilliant partnership, but they weren't anywhere near the level they were when they were with Easton. So hopefully we'll get
my God, honestly, this is horrible.
even on me.
And three of the players that have been released, Ronan Hughes, Ben Sterling, and by the looks of it, Kyle Monroe. No official confirmation of that yet, but that's the way it's going. The players, I think it's fair to say we're not going to miss. We're not going to miss either of them.
Don't want to be harsh, but there's nobody you're going to lose any sleep over. It's the kind of players that we've always kind of said for a while. You want to trim the fat of the squad there. I think we'd sacrifice three of those players to get one higher quality player in with a better wage. Obviously, finance wise, I don't know how that's going to be working with us, but it is three players off the wage bill that really didn't contribute too much, to be fair, because it's another kind of Accies curse of players that we've given a lot of game time to, and as soon as they've left us, even if it's loan deals, you don't hear anything of these guys. And not to big ourselves up too much, but if you're playing for a championship team like Hamilton Accies, if you're going to a non-league team or even a third division team, you'd like to think these players would be standing out. But I didn't hear any plaudits for Ben Sterling. Didn't hear anything for Kyle Monroe, but
I did hear Ten Hag's and for Ronan Hughes.
But it's one of the things where you look at the amount of players we've wasted time on, and then they kind of fall off the face of the earth.
It's mad. These, like, I don't want to go in depth about players that are no longer with us and criticise, because we've probably criticised them enough from the time they were with us. But these players, it just goes to show you the fact that we nearly stayed up with the players. Obviously we went down with Brian Rice. We actually nearly stayed up with the players as regular first team. Like, they were one of the first sort of names in the team sheet, which just shows you players that have went to junior sides, third division side, league, two sides, whatever league it was, and they've no sort of, like David says, you'd think that they'd be the sort of standout players. Ronan's obviously went to East Kilbride. Kyle was at Clydebank, and Ben Sterling was at Edinburgh City, and them haven't particularly stood out when they were on loan. And Ronan Hughes, I've not heard much from him about EK. I think Ronan Hughes probably that he will do well at that level, but for a team that's in the top division for 7 years in a row in the Championship, they're no players that you can really afford to have in your wage bill. If you're getting rid of them, it frees up a good amount of money to sort of put in a player that's going to make a difference for you.
Definitely.
It needs to be brought up. Is it whether there's a fine line between fans being overly harsh, or is it these guys have just never been good enough? Because it's been something we've been all calling out for certain. Like I say, we won't name names and go into individuals, but there are, out of those players, there are players that we've said for years aren't good enough, and they've got time and time again been given umpteen chances, like Brandon said, at SPL level for the majority of the time. I mean, I don't understand what we've not seen, because it has been really evident with certain players that they've not been of the standard that's needed, and they do seem to be given chances after chances. So
nine times out of 10 it's academy players, so I don't know if there's maybe
another A on that.
Something behind that, where I totally get that the elite youth academy. Sorry, I had to say that. Obviously, they try and progress you through as well as possible, and yeah, it makes sense to a degree. But if you're pushing people through constantly that aren't good enough, it just completely contradicts what you're trying to do. We give youth a chance, sort of progress from within, and that's the mantra that they go about. But it just, because you're pushing these players that are seen to clearly not be working so many times, it's painting the wrong picture of what you're trying to do, because you're saying, oh, we're going to give you a chance, this is a platform for you to go to the next level. But because there's been so many recently that have been pushed and not got to the level of the players that we constantly hear about, like your Dockerys, Fergusons, McCarthy's, Eastons, because there's been so many of them, it's clouded over the fact that we've brought through so many good players, and that's when you get the majority of the fans sort of criticising the academy and sort of pushing the players through, because you've got these players that aren't getting to that level. So there needs to be a sort of balance of bringing through the youth, but making sure you're bringing them through at the right time, because otherwise it's unfair on them as well, because you're pushing players through when they're not ready, and it's just setting them up to fail ultimately, and it's because we're not planning appropriately. And it looks as if this season again we're a bit slow in the mark to plan, but we'll see what comes.
Yeah, I need to add something else on that too, because again, a point about the whole youth academy thing I've been building up in my head for so long. But like Brandon said, we absolutely try these ones that aren't quite ready yet to death, but see the ones that are ready, we haven't managed them right for a long time. I mean, probably two of the best we've had in the last 10 years, and Lewis Ferguson and now Jamie Hamilton. And like I say, they're definitely good enough, but we haven't managed them right, and then they're going for nothing or a small development fee, because the way that I understand it is the development fee, who we ask for it, they don't want to pay it, therefore it goes to a tribunal, and it's a fraction of that. So it's a case of we're pushing these ones that aren't good enough, and they get wasted and then end up going to part-time football, or they are good enough, we don't manage them properly, and then we lose them for nothing. The whole, I mean, like I say, I don't see us as that elite youth academy team anymore, because look at your teams like Dundee United and your Hearts and teams like that. There are plenty of teams that are bringing up good youth players and playing them in their first teams now. That isn't something abnormal anymore. I mean, back in the days of your McCarthy's and MacArthur's, it was us and Falkirk were like the two kind of big teams out with the SPL doing that. But most teams do that now, and they actually sustain them a lot better. I mean, look at the boy Ramsey leaving Aberdeen, half a season at first team football, and he gets them millions of pounds. That's managed properly, because we've had guys that have proven, like Scott McMahon, his well over 100 appearances for us, played at a high level, and we get next to nothing for him as well, because we don't manage the contracts. So what is the point in doing the whole youth academy thing? I think there's a difference between being this elite youth academy team or being a team that can't afford transfers, therefore rely on youth academy. There's like I said, like the perfect example that Brandon brought up is just because these guys have came through and are playing for us at this level, that doesn't mean they're good enough. So the whole youth academy thing is starting to baffle me, because you need to be managing these players right, because what is the point in doing it if you're not getting your huge sell-on fee? You know what I mean? So we're doing this for no money, and we've been boasting about every statement I hear this summer talks about the last, 7 of the last 10 years in the SPL. Get a year of the way we're going in this trajectory, it's all going to be for nothing. We're going to be back where we were before that good period started. You know what I mean? We're going to be back in League 1, Division 2 football, and it's going to be this whole time that we keep relying on and boasting about is going to be for nothing.
Nice and positive, David. Nice.
Yes.
Keep it light. Another one of the players we lost was also David Moyle, your best friend. He's obviously
play James Blunt.
Not got a club yet, but a player that split opinion, it's fair to say, even amongst ourselves. Worked hard, scored a few important goals, but ultimately, again, I think falls under the bracket of good enough. Disagree now that he's gone.
I mean, I think we could have had better. Definitely, 100%. Completely agree with that. I know I was tended to be the one that stuck up for him every week, but we could have had better. But at the present moment, we've not replaced him. He did score a few crucial goals. He scored goals that go down in Accies history. Listen, he had his critics. I always say with Accies fans, be careful what you wish for. So far from what I've heard, replacement isn't looking too good in comparison to him. But no, listen, he scored a few goals. The championship, he was finding his feet. I kept going on about how a striker, any strikers for us last season was on a losing battle because the manner in which we were playing in the setup. But ultimately in the SPL as well, he wasn't good enough. But we could have had better, but I do think he was starting to find his feet. And who knows, under a new manager, they could have went to the next level should we have been playing a certain type of football. But he's gone now. We need to replace him. We need a number 9. That's another position that we've not replaced yet, and we just need to hope that we do bring one in because it's imperative. We can't go with
Winter and
Ryan all season. You need another. I'm not saying that Winter and Ryan are ready to be a partnership up top. We need to have. You can't just have 2 strikers.
Moyo's one of those players that he could literally fall under so many different categories. Through his time at Accies, he was one of the guys that just absolute raw effort, like would work his socks off. It gets forgotten though, there was a huge period at the start of last season where he made next to no effort. There was rumours that he was told he could leave and he completely down tools, and then the fact that his upturn after that did nothing but prove that point, that he really did down tools for a wee while. There's times where he just looked raw, but I think he's another one that I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to a non-league team in England. When you look at somebody like Manny Duku, who had a better record than him at the same level and similar type of player, big physical presence striker, and you'd think he would maybe do a bit better than that, and when was the last we heard of him now? I can imagine that he'll be one of these guys that kind of falls off the face of the earth in terms of like professional career. But it was at this point he's definitely the type of player I think we need to replace, because we've seen how many times we've went without that physical presence. This is even going back to when we had Augie at Accies, where when you have that kind of big intimidating physical striker who puts pressure on defenders, when you take him out of the team, there's nothing, like we're fighting for the ball. And I think he's at this point he's someone where I'd rather have him than no have him at the moment, but that can all change with a good replacement. But you need to be proactive.
It seems to me like every season we go by getting one less striker. Every season as it goes. I think there's a period we had 6, then we lost Oakley, then we lost Augie, then we lost Callum Smith. So it looks like they're just fucking going back and back and back.
You need strikers though to progress. You look at the forward line we had when we got promotion to the playoffs. That wasn't even a good enough strike force to win the league. But what would you do to have Jason Scotland, Mac, James Keatons and Andy Ryan, like a front 4 like that, and the options and depth you have? We're nowhere near that. And I don't think there's many teams in our division that have that kind of depth anymore, because most people rely on that one kind of talisman player. I don't think there was any teams last season that had the multiple guys hitting 10 plus. Like Partick Thistle had it in the first half of the season, and you've seen what happened when you took Zach Rudden out of that team. So I think it's getting harder and harder. There's players that you would consider, I mean, for example is Stephen Boyd, someone we weren't that bothered about losing, and now he's been picked up and he's in a half decent Inverness team. So I think it's harder to find that kind of flair or forward player, and some of these guys are getting second chances that you might not have thought would have got at this level. So I think it's getting tougher and tougher.
Well, 2 of the players that we know we are looking at were on trial season games. One of them is O'Kara Simmons, who looks to be most likely the David Moyo-esque replacement and the other one is Johnny Ngandu, who's another. How to describe him really? He was described. I was told he was played off the wing against Larne, and then when I went to watch the Larkham Thistle game, he was played as a 10. Don't really know kind of where. Maybe he's a bit more versatile, but those are the two players I've got on trial, plus Michael Doyle, former Queen's Park right back, who looks to be signing. That looks kind of the more realistic of the three. But just on Okera Simmons quickly, you were talking about getting a replacement for Moyo. God, I hope this is not the guy we're looking to replace David Moyo, because I don't want to go down on the guy, but didn't see the Larne game, but was told that no effort, didn't look promising whatsoever. Went to see against Larkhall, he got 90 minutes. He was the only player to get 90 minutes in the full game, and did nothing other than steal a penalty off a 15-year-old in the Larkhall game. That was the only thing he did. So he's not somebody that I would want to see Accies sign, but as I was saying at the game, guaranteed that means he gets a 2-year contract now. 3-year deal. That Johnny Ngandu, though, I think, as I was saying to Brandon just before we started recording, I think he's worth a punt, to be honest. Really good write-ups from Coventry. He was under-23 captain when they won the Cup. He's only 21 years old, and he was captain on the 23 team. That's good. And from what I saw of him in the Larkhall game, and promising things said about him when he played Larne as well, worked hard when he took the ball back, was quick with his feet, had a few little bits of good play with Andy Ryan. He was playing as a 10, Andy as the 9, sorry. So Johnny Ngandu is the one I think's worth the punt. And then Michael Doyle seems like the most obvious signing.
I think I can't really judge that much because I've not seen any of the games, but solely going off paper and judging what other people have said, even before looking at what people said, I'd have said, after hearing sort of about reducing our budget and whatnot, Ngandu and Michael Doyle just make complete sense. We need a right back. Absolutely desperate for a right back. We needed a right back since
Aaron McGowan left.
Since Aaron McGowan left, I was going to say since what's his name left last year.
Lee Hodgson.
No, Wolves boy.
Oh, Mathis.
Oh, look, Mathis.
Aye. But aye, and Doyle, he's played his full career in Scottish football. He knows the game well. He was a standout, probably was a captain as well for Queen's Park. Right. He's a right back, similar to sort of, I think you've spoken about it before, similar to Aaron McGowan. He likes to go forward. And it's another player that Accies can have the famous A on the squad sheet as well, because he's an Accies Academy product. So I think it makes complete sense in all sort of forms. It means we've got a right back in, and it'd be so silly not to bring him in now. It's a player that clearly the majority of fans would be happy for them to sign. So I think go and sign him. Ngandu, is that how you pronounce it? Ngandu. For what I've read about him, I read an article from like a Coventry press, whatever, and he seems to have a good write up. He was the captain of the under-23 side, and people that I've spoke to have all said good things about him. So you've got him in. He's already sort of been embedded in the squad for a few weeks now, so I sign him as well. But looking on paper about Simmons, hearing what I've heard about him, it's just if you're signing him, his record on paper is far worse than Moyo's. So you're replacing Moyo with someone that probably will be a lot cheaper, but if he's not standing out against Larkhall Thistle, then why would you sign a player that's not standing out against a junior team? It just makes zero sense, which, as you say, means we'll get another 3-year deal. Whilst we're talking about the sort of squad, David briefly touched on Jamie Hamilton. There's been a few rumours sort of circulating about him. Obviously, people have said he's been training with St Mirren, is what I heard after Larkhall. But that would obviously mean that St Mirren would need to pay a development fee. St Mirren's obviously just signed Declan Gallagher as well, so it could be the case that that's that out the window. Maybe Hamilton will sign. People did sort of say that Accies still have confidence that Hamilton will sign a deal. So
I just find that sickening though. I don't know what it is, but it's just something about, especially when it's our academy players, when it's going to somebody else in Scotland, it just feels like we've fucked up there.
Not even like somebody else in Scotland, I think is different, because if he was signing for like Hibs or Hearts, or even like big Celtic and Rangers like Greg Doherty.
And let's not kid on, like St Mirren are a bigger club than us. Like,
but not by much. There's
but exactly. It's no like
it's not a massive jump up.
Aye, we're not kidding ourselves on at the same time, but it's not like the big step up in your career. And I just find it sickening when that happens, because I just feel that we just haven't managed it properly at all. Even if it's a case of, listen, he didn't have a brilliant year last year, but I still think, and I'll touch on this later on, the squad as a whole didn't have a great year. I mean, we're talking about the lack of recruitment and things like that. We need all of these players that we had high hopes for last year to do better. So we're not completely down and out in terms of our squad when you actually look at the players on paper. Jamie Hamilton's somebody that you wish they were just... We don't know what gets talked about behind closed doors, but you would think that, especially if they're getting who they're saying they're getting to go in charge, they'd be saying, listen, we can totally change you in a year. We can put you back in the shop one day. It shows you what a year can do. I mean, look, people... Scott McMahon had these critics, but he got rave reviews last year, and I think us that backed him for the time he was at Hamilton said, this is what we've been saying the whole time. So if Jamie Hamilton a year later from now, we're talking about, boy, completely turned his career around, really put himself in the window, got his move, we'll be saying that's what he deserves. But I just find that a total sickener when we lose somebody to someone, like I say, not that much bigger than ourselves.
He was at the games at the weekend, and a few fans managed corner him, let's say, at one point asking about it.
This cunt.
I was in Craig Tara.
But cornered him and kind of asked about it, and all he said was the kind of party line was, we're still talking, we're still in conversation, having Accies. But like I said, that was when we were getting told by other fans around that he was training with St Mirren and all this. So listen, I don't personally expect Jamie Hamilton to sign on. I don't see it happen. I do see him going to... I would have hoped it would have been a Hibs or a Hearts would have paid the money and took the chance on him and tried to develop him into one of their first team. That's what I'd have liked. But
I don't
for
know,
the way
man.
it's going, I think he is going to end up at a
If
team
you're
like
a St Mirren or that, I mean, granted, like Brandon said, they have just brought in Declan Gallagher, which is a great signing on paper if they can get him to perform. But is Jamie Hamilton worth the like you say, that development fees, what, 40 million at least or something like that?
More than that, I think it will be.
So
he's been with us since he was 10-year-old. He's played.
Aye, so are you guaranteed you're going to get the performances out of him for that kind of money? I think it's too much a risk.
See, I think people will look at it the same way. Our clubs will look at it maybe the same way we are. We're saying to him, listen, give us a year, give us another year deal, get you back up to that level. Aye. I think other teams like St Mirren will say, listen, they may kind of begrudge the development fee, but I think any club would do that. But they might look at it and go, he can perform.
Small time pain is worth long time gain. And like
that's the wall in his gym.
That's a tattoo.
Fucking better than that one I've got anyway. But no, I think like you touched on it there. I think he had, for the level that we thought and know that he could get to, he had a poor season. That's not to say he was rotten, because there was players that were far worse than him last season, but there's a level in which he can get to, in which we thought he was going to get to, which he didn't get to last season. That's not solely down to him, that's down to how we were set up, how he was getting played. Like you've said, if Rankin comes in, may as well just name drop him now, if Rankin comes in, he sort of has a sort of philosophy, a mentality, for what we're hearing, the way how he gets on with players, and how he sort of nurtures them, develops them, he can get Jamie Hamilton back to that level and that back on that path which he was going into. Accies then get him on a deal, say, like, listen, we'll give you that extra money which you're wanting. Rankin's going to put you back in the upwards sort of, whatever you want to call it, trajectory, and we'll make money out of you next season. But give us that chance, because there's not many other offers out there for you.
I think if
we said that to ourselves at the end of last season. Like, it's not like teams are lining up for him. No. And like I say, with the development fee, if that was me with my money, or you with your money, you would only be spending that kind of money on a shoe-in. And I just don't think he was that last season. There was a couple of times, I remember, the Falkirk League Cup game, and he strolled that game, him and Sean Watt, even though Sean Watt actually gave a goal away. The two of them were excellent, and we were thinking to ourselves, fuck, here we go. These boys are going to be class this year. And then what was the game? Was it Air UA or Queen of the South away scored a cracking goal for right back.
Queen of the South it was.
Like, there's times he showed what he's capable of. Now, granted, the majority of the second half of the season he played out of position and he did do well, but he needs to step up. If he stays with us, he plays almost every game if he's fit. I would be like, if there's a few extra quid on the table, I would probably take it, being in all honesty. But you need to look at the bigger picture, where I think there was a point where he did go on trial to Brighton. The big clubs were in the conversation for him. You must be looking at yourself at one point and right, I've went from Brighton to St Mirren. What can I do to bring this back? If it's a case of sacrificing a few quid to play every game possible, because he ain't going to do that at St Mirren.
Playing in a better manner and playing in a more attacking mindset and with sort of players that are running the same wavelength.
Don't get me wrong, man. It's wishful thinking for us as fans, but that seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? Like you say, is that shite you just came out with?
My God can judge me.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a risk for a high reward if it pays off. In what he's approaching the age where the development fee might not even be an issue then. So he'll get a new. It's not like he's going to crash and burn, but I just think that he's one of these guys that comes into the same. We'll talk about Lewis Smith at one point as well. He needs a big season, and I think he needs to stay here and play every game he can get.
I think the last person that we've not touched on in the squad update is Popescu. That's the one player that's not going to be with us this season as well. It's another position that we're going to need to recruit in. I think if you're losing Popescu, I suppose you could make the argument that Sean Want's coming back.
Yeah.
I still think if we sign Hamilton, go to Riley,
Easton,
we've got Wanton, we've got Easton. Do you really need another centre back? Because then if you're bringing in Doyle as well, it means that Hamilton can play in his natural position.
Yeah.
Which
I
think do you really need another? So if you're if you sign Hamilton, if you sign Easton, that means you've got him, O'Reilly, and that's good enough. 4 players. Obviously losing Popescu, we were hoping we were going to sign Popescu. We were told we were in the driving seat, and then just as what we're about to go into, obviously the car exploded because the news came out that a few weeks after the season ended, that Manager Live, that it was looking likely that Accies and Taylor were going to part in company.
Which came as a big surprise to everybody, let's be honest.
At the time it came as a massive surprise, just completely unexpected. Then a month and a half later he was still there.
It was like, I mean, we did an interview with him. There was no sign of that at all, no sense of it at all. We spoke a lot about transfers going forward and looking forward to the next season and all this. And so when that news came out, it was a big shock to the system. Nobody expected it. And as Brandon said, it then went quiet for a long time. We're hearing lots of rumours. Just quickly, been sitting here for quite a while, but just quickly, there was rumours of Dougie Imrie supposedly coming in and replacing him. That
times
kicked
when
off
it was
a whole...
rumoured that it was a done deal.
Yep, so that, that kicked off a whole twist of things where basically we're sitting there waiting on our phones for Dougie Imrie to get announced to see he's walked away from Morton. So, but as Brandon said, month went by and no news whatsoever. Stuart Taylor's still apparently in the door, but from what we're hearing now, he's been officially confirmed away. He's gone. We're on the search for a new manager, but it looks to be John Rankin, who's been taking pre-season, who's been assistant to Stan as well, and somebody that, let's be honest, very, very happy.
No, listen,
to get as manager.
He talks a really good game. Just oozes class. Very handsome man, lovely teeth. What was it I called him? A pump of a man.
To be fair, he's one of these guys that, like, we don't know anything about him officially, but you just take away all these impressions for him, for the odd 2-minute interview things. I remember when I first started working after school, when I started my first full-time job, I was sitting next to a woman whose son played for the Hibs Academy with him. And I remember specifically, and that's fucking 15 years ago, and I do remember her specifically saying her boy used to absolutely rave about John Rankin's fitness. He wouldn't eat anything that you shouldn't be eating. He was like fitness daft, and you can even get like this again. It's the impressions, you can tell that's true. looking at him, talking to him, hearing stuff he says, he's just one of these guys where, I mean, I've seen a few tweets already with Alec Neil vibes for him, and you do kind of get that. He's like, again, the Dougie Emery vibe as well, where he's been a tenacious player, he's really influential. You think that, I mean, again, I've not seen any training, I don't know the guy personally, but I could tell that this team is going to have an incredible work rate. The fitness will be different level in comparison, and they'll be tenacious as fuck.
Yeah, but one of the things that I picked up on was when they were interviewing Sean Want maybe, and kind of made like a wee quippy remark. Oh, John's certainly putting it's been a tough few days. Just shows me that he's went in and went, right, boys, no fucking around. Let's get to it. We're getting our fitness up, and that was something we criticised under Stuart Taylor, and something that looks as if John Rankin's trying to fix.
And the thing that obviously, even with that, like usually players are, if they're getting put through their paces, they seem you get a bit of a scunnered vibe, but you don't get that with them. Do you know what I mean? Any player I've saw, both with Accies and sort of when he was coaching Hearts, etc., they've never had a bad word to say about him. There was the boy that was on loan at Queen's Park last season, Connor Smith. I saw a tweet when John Rankin left Hearts, just saying that he was the best guy that he's ever met in football so far. Such a nice guy, just helped the youngsters so much, and that completely fits the bill a bit. Aki's obviously needing what we're the mantra in which we're going to look to go down, which we always go down anyway. But I think, looking at his interviews in Sky Sports, just how he talks, like you said, Alex Neil vibes, you do get that, and hopefully we're not giving him this big platform to go and then crash and bundle. Then in a few weeks' time we'll be seeing Rankin out. But
in all fairness though, we've seen that this not work that many times, where the first impression I get is this guy's ready for this. But you're like, I think we all knew that Martin Cannon wasn't ready for it, and it was just that's the next stage of evolution. But I think we would all say it's quite evident. I mean, think of the Challenge Cup game against Hearts B. We cruised that game right up until we won it. You know what I mean? We dominated that game, but he kept that team in it. And next thing you know, our asses are shaking. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot to be said about the way we're approaching this season. I mean, it's something that's no news, but seeing teams around, especially ones that we feel we should be competing with, like your Mortons and Ayr United, signing good players and making plenty of moves, showing ambition. But at the end of the day, we still do have a good core of players in this squad, and they really underperformed last year, so much so that we're not even considering them just now. We're thinking the squad's bare bones when it's not. When you look at your guys like Stevie Lawson and Scott Martin, players like that are good players. Well, like I say, as this time last year we were talking about how excited we were to see Lewis Smith. If anybody's going to get the best out of this, he's probably the best option that we will get.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see, and this is just as you were talking, it came to mind, players like Scott Martin, Steve Lawson, Regan Mimno, under the likes of John Rankin, because I feel that when he came in, did see a little bit of an improvement with Mimno. And I think if Scott Martin was fit and was able to play the latter half of that season properly, we'd seen a big improvement as him, just because he can probably get a lot out of them, being obviously an ex himself, and how he liked to play. I get that as a manager, he wants to be in your face, he wants that high press, and you kind of got a taste of it in the the pre-season games. We've kind of said already that it's hard to judge given the level of the opposition, but from the way he wanted to play and how he acted on the touchline, I saw a few fans that were standing behind the dugout against Lark Hall saying just how he just, every player seemed to respond to him so much better than the Stuart Taylor. He seemed to get much more out of them purely just by being there, and his comments and his feedback to them while they're on the pitch just seem to respond to and really listen to. Compare that to Stuart Taylor, it's
I think obviously the standard of the opposition so far, it makes it really hard to judge.
Of course.
Saturday will be a big.
Do you know what I mean? Saturday will be a big thing, but we still need to remember. There's a good group of players there, but we've failed to prepare again. He's got a few weeks now until the real nitty gritty starts, the actual bread and butter, the cup in the league. So he's got a few weeks now to bring a few players in to add to that crop which he's got, because the standard of opposition hasn't been the best, but I don't for a second think that Stuart Taylor would have got the results. Like,
No, somebody mentioned that before.
I think we're playing junior teams. We played Larne, which are a fairly decent player, decent team. Sorry,
I was surprised with that result
that they're in. So he's clearly got them up for these games and thinking, well, it's a pre-season friendly, but go out and fucking prove a point. Go out and just keep going. Don't stop, sort of thing. Whereas other managers we've had previously in pre-season friendlies, it's all about minutes. It's all about minutes, lack of effort, sort of very lacklustre performances. Like last season, for instance, was it 6-0 or 4-0 we get pumped off Dundee, a closed door friendly. So he's clearly got the right mentality. He's embedding the right attitude within these players. It looks as if he's getting the right sort of the fitness aspects and whatnot in it. And if that's where the group of players he's got there now, you need to add to that squad, because we have got a good core group of players, but there's several positions that we 100% need to improve on. And if the board give him that backing to improve within the positions, and if he's going with the mentality and the sort of drive and the sort of ideas in which he's got, then it'll be good to see. But the board do need to back him, and we need to see improvements in other areas of the squad as well.
Winning breeds confidence. That's what it boils down to, you know. Like how we had good pre-season results. Say we get a good one against Queen's Park on Saturday. We've got a closed door game. Queen of the South, sorry, Queen's Park. Queen of the South. We had a door game beginning of the week as well. We win those games, I think how good you would feel going into the Dundee game in the cup.
Like even
feel top of the world
for the fan base side of it. I mean, none of us are saying like, oh, they are the opposition that they are, but there is positivity because of that. Now, I think, like I've said this before, but other games, I think this Queen of the South game is genuinely a massive opportunity, because at the end of the day, we're talking about the season ticket incentive and all that we're very much in a try before you buy society. Like, I'm not committing to that kind of money if it's going to be absolute heartbreak for the full year. End of the day, a lot of people are seeing Queen of the South as making positive moves, because end of the day, they've made a lot of signings and it's a lot of ambition from a fan's point of view. End of the day, all these signings could be shite. There's a lot of that can be argued are League One, bottom end Championship players. It's the fact that they're making all these moves, and there is a few players in there that we would have all taken, with names that we've mentioned, like your Lee Conleys, your Gavin Rileys, things like that. But if we actually turn up, and like I say, we do have a team capable of competing. At the end of the day, we are in the Championship and they're no. Like, I think that's a perfectly good audition to get these fans. Like I said about the Wraith game at the end of last season, it's a reason to get fans in the gate. It's the same way all this, like the season ticket thing is a great starting point. What you need to then improve on is the match day experience. Because even then, give the tickets away for free, I'm still not getting my money's worth if I'm going to watch us get pumped every week. So it's I think it's a big thing, because at the end of the day, even with those friendlies at the weekend, winning breeds confidence. I'm not going to go and spend that kind of money if I think I'm going to watch us get pumped. We've done it that many times, so I think it's a huge game, really.
I think quite like 95% of the fans for the past sort of 2 months have felt so disengaged with the club. Like, there's been so many fans that I've read on Twitter saying, "Oh, the club's not making any effort with us. Like, we've not got any manager. We've not been linked to a single player. Fuck this next season." Past week and a half, ever since it's been confirmed that Taylor's leaving, we've had a few good positive results. The fans are seeming to get behind the idea of Rankin. It's the past month and a half, like, it was typical Accies fashion, where we had nothing to be excited about throughout the summer. It was probably next level, because the fact that it took us a month and a half for the manager not to be there. Now, look to have confirmed our manager, who everybody's getting right behind. We've had a few good positive results, and there seems to be a bit of a happier place, which you don't really seem to see within the Accies fan base.
How many times have I seen tweets the last 2 days, people saying, confirm Rankin, I'm buying my ticket.
Aye.
As soon as you confirm Rankin,
It shows you though, it doesn't
It just shows you how it dictates.
We want to be positive.
I know.
Then it's the fact that we're
You
really
wouldn't
do
think- you
try.
wouldn't think
We
that.
try on to results against junior teams is a positivity, because at the end of the day we've been told that we're in desperate financial state when you look around and every team around us isn't.
Every single team around us is improving, but then
The
like
business is normal.
like you've said though, like I know it's pointless signing players when you've not got a manager confirmed. So I kind of do understand them for that perspective, but there's no point in just signing someone as well for the sake of it. Which let's hope that they're being very savvy for a change and they're signing players who we actually need and who are going to improve us. I think 2 of the 3 trialists that we've seen are players that we need to improve us. There's another few positions that we need to improve on as well. There's no point in just signing someone for the sake of it. So if they're going down the route of signing who we need that's going to better us, along with the sort of positivity that we've seen recently, it's whilst it's so, if you want to call it, hot now, and fans are for a change actually in a more positive mentality and a happier place, because let's be honest, the past month and a half was rotten, then take advantage of that, hit it while it's warming out, get Rankin in, sign Easton, sign Hamilton, sign Gandu, sign Doyle, get a recognised striker in that's going to add to it, and then you will see the season ticket numbers increase. Because listen, we don't want to be negative constantly, but let's be honest, the club don't help us in a few manners to sort of be positive. They've done a few good things this summer with sort of season ticket and sort of taking on ideas. But
I see sarcasm though when there is positive.
I know.
Like we won't go into it, but you've seen sarcasm.
Just let's keep it positive as much as we can. Sign players which we need. Sign the manager we want, and then you're not given much scope for the fans to be negative. If they're telling you what to do and you're doing it, then if it doesn't work out, then you can say, well, you're the ones that said that. We don't get much occasions where we say that that's what we want, go and get it, and then if it doesn't go wrong, I'm more than happy to put my hands up. I'm sure you would, and 90% of the fans would. But we just need to hit it while it's home, get the players in that we need, get the manager that which we need, and go have a bash at the Championship, because let's be honest, the standard isn't going to be that great this season. There's teams in
wide
it
open,
which it is wide open. Your Dundees and your Thistles are probably your 2 that you'd probably say are the better end of the table, but it's very wide open. There's not a proper standout team. And if we've got a manager that oozes class, oozes confidence, and we sign players that we ultimately need to sign, then who knows what can happen.
I think to kind of go back to the transfer side of things, which, let's face it, it's the only reason I'm here.
I'm half expecting a notebook to be whipped.
Pull some notes out his hat.
But I think when it comes to everything you've just said there, I totally agree with. The way I think they'll approach it is, I think they'll only sign players for the starting 11. I think it will be a case of that is our starting 11. The bench will purely be the youth. So when you were talking about centre halves earlier, I think Easton will come in. If Hamilton comes in, they'll take him. If not, it will be whoever was it. Fergus Owens. It'll be the next one in. It'll be the same way. If we get the boy in Gandu, that's the wingers in. If not, it will be McGowan. We'll take that place, and he'll be whatever choice he is there. I think it will be the only sign players to improve the starting 11, which, again, with the history we've had with injuries last few years, is a risky game, because how many games did Vertanen get last year? How many games did Martin get last year? How many games did Spence get last year? That's 3 of your centre midfielders. If you're playing in the middle of the park with kids all season, that can totally change your whole team. So I think it's... I don't have a problem with that, because I do think Rankin will get the best out of these younger players. Again, I don't know how I'm coming to that thought, but you agree with it. It's just you have that confidence in them. You
don't want to fill too much with youth. Like I touched on, like we keep touching on, there's no point in rushing these people in, because you're putting them off to a bad start. You're rushing people in when they're no ready. I've got no issue with having youth players on the bench on more than one occasion, sort of bringing them in cup games, but you need to embed them in the right manner. There's no point in rushing them. We've got a fairly decent core squad now. There's positions which we ultimately 100% need to add. We need to have a better. We just need to have better players in certain positions, and then we're not asking for 10 signings. We're asking for about five signings, which we need, and then give the youth a chance. The occasion as well. Have them on the bench. Just don't rush them in. There's no point. You're putting them in a losing battle. But it's
the perfect example of what you just said there is Lewis Smith. He came in the SPL, he got his minutes, he took them with both hands, he put in great performances. Soon it was the season where the weight of the expectation was on him. Let's face it, he crumbled last year. He didn't have a good season at all. And listen, I think I speak for every Ajax fan where I don't think there's a player that we would all want more to do well, but it's the case of that's exactly it. You put that bit more pressure on these guys, that's the win or lose, it's the difference. So like it could be like, for example, this season going forward, granted his fitness, they'll expect a lot more from Mali Redfern because they'll say that he's had his transition period. So this is where you'll see whether it's make or break for him. And it is a case of bringing in somebody like Michael Doyle. I mean, that's the kind of non-risk signing that we've been talking about since we started this podcast. Let's face it, it won't be mega money. It'll be your average full-time Scottish football championship wage. But he's no risk. Like Brandon said, played the whole career up here. He knows it inside out. I said he's after the playoff final, he was very comfortable. He is like, he's might not be the potential wise as AJ, but he's as close to AJ as what we can afford at the moment. He is that forward right back that we needed last season, that empty space was for. So like you said when we did our January window, like somebody like Kyle Jacobs, that's the same kind of boat. It's one of these guys where I've got no doubt that Michael Doyle comes in and does well this season, and that's a position you think, no, we're sorted there. So I don't get why we don't explore that more. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain positions where that's near impossible to do, like striker wise. If they are half decent and you know they're going to do well, they're not going to be up for transfer or a free agent. But guys like Michael Doyle and that, I think, are no brainers. I think we probably could afford to do a couple more signings like that in certain areas.
I think it's just to round up what we need. I think it's a right back. Still need 2 centre backs as it stands at the present moment. An attacking mid, a striker. I think that's the 5 in which if the board go and get as well as Appoint and Rankin, got a good core squad there.
Maybe goalkeeper.
Aye.
Jamie Smith as a backup.
Jamie Smith is in the Championship. I think we've got a group of squad. We've got a squad there that massively underperformed last season. Individuals which we thought so much better of, and we know that they can perform a lot better. But we were playing setups and we were playing a brand of football which I wouldn't like to be involved in as well. So if we're bringing in 5 players that we ultimately need, as well as the squad of players that we've got which we know can perform better, and if they're working under the helm of someone that's got a positive attitude, oozes class, and is driving home a different mentality, then we'll see what happens this season.
Well, I think we should wrap up there, guys. It's been a good chat. It's been good to actually get in and see us for once. Everything else is done online, so this has been nice. As always, thank you for listening, for watching on YouTube, whatever you're doing, we appreciate it. We'll leave a link, as we said at the beginning, to in the description, to G4 Podcast Studio if you want to come in and hire the studio for your own podcast. It would be great. It's a great studio. We've loved being in it, and you'll see us in it a lot more.
We've also got David's dressing room, 50 like copies outfit.
By the look, they've actually been well behaved. I'll take this. Someday, are we doing auditions to replace me? So I ain't coming back.
Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you again
soon. Cheers.